Hey, welcome back. We are so glad you're joining us for this final conversation, Embracing Oneness by Dr. Tony Evans, where we've been digging into what does it mean to listen and learn about each other in both diversity and then coming together in unity. And what does the gospel say about this? Now, if you've missed any of these conversations, we want to encourage you that you can get them on demand on our website. So go back and fill in the blanks of what you've missed, because this is such rich content, because we're in the season as a church of not just having monologue services where you hear a pastor speak, but being able to wrestle with scriptures and talk to other believers and what does this mean and how can I learn and how do I apply this to my life? And as a part of this new rhythm, after we go through a few months of classes and groups, we're going to join together. And so this Wednesday night, we're going to join together from all of our campuses, all our online community, all around the world, and we're going to worship in a night of prayer and worship, just celebrating Jesus. So we hope you will join us next Wednesday night. And now, over to Dr. Tony Evans as we learn about oneness embraced.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Pastor Chris here from the Plantation campus. Want to welcome you all here tonight to our final week of classes. Tonight, we are about to jump into the final class of Dr. Tony Evans, Oneness Embraced. But before we do that, you might be watching right now and you're thinking, wait, I didn't sign up for that class. That's not the class that I want to be a part of. No need to worry. If you're on our website right now, all you have to do is look directly below me and you're going to see a list of all the classes that we're offering tonight. All you got to do is click on one of those. But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you're going to have to go through a couple extra steps. All you have to do is go to our website, www.calvaryftl.com/classes, and you'll be able to choose whichever class you want to be a part of tonight. But with that, we're going to jump into our final session, session 6 with Dr. Tony Evans, the Key to Kingdom Oneness. Hope you guys enjoy it.
In August 2005, a lady named Katrina visited the city of New Orleans, and it wasn't a pretty visit. Hurricane-force winds brought loss of life, loss of property. Futures were destroyed. The primary contributor to the damage was when the levees broke. The levees existed to hold back the damage that Katrina could do. But when they broke, the city was flooded and much of it destroyed. Lives forever shaken, devastated, not only because of a hurricane named Katrina, but because of failed levees. God has a levee in history called the church. The job of the church is to hold back the proliferation of evil so that the damage evil desires to do, it's restricted from doing because the church's presence limits it. But when the levees break, when the church fails, then the damage that sin and evil and unrighteousness can do is devastating to individuals, to families, to whole societies. The issue today to salvage our culture, to reverse our direction, is the church. But it's unfortunate, people have reduced the definition of church to minutes of meeting on a weekly basis for a song and a sermon, without fully understanding what the church is for and how the churches ought to function. That's why Matthew 16 is so important. We call it in hermeneutics, the art and science of biblical interpretation, the law of first mention. It's the first time the church is mentioned by Jesus Christ himself. And he lets us know a secret about the church, about the levees, and how they ought to work if we want to save and redeem the culture. He asked the question, who do men say that I am? And when he asked the question, who do men say that I am? They said John the Baptist or Elijah or one of the prophets. That was good, but that was wrong. Then he asked his clergy, but who do you say that I am? The you is plural in the Greek, so if Jesus were texting, he'd be saying, who do y'all say the Son of Man is? That's when Peter speaks up. Peter, a lot of times, wore peppermint socks. He loved to keep his foot in his mouth. On this occasion, though, he hit a bullseye. He said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Jesus commends him on his recognition, and then he introduces him to the church. He says in verse 18, I say to you, you are Peter, And upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. He introduces us to the word ecclesia, the word for church. He says you're Peter. The Greek word is petros. It means a stone. But he says, I'm not going to build my program on a stone. You're a good man, Peter. You're a great spokesperson. You've got a leadership type A personality. But when it comes to what I'm doing in history, I need more than a stone. I need a rock. I'll build my church upon the rock. The question is, what does the rock refer to? Well, in classical Greek, this word petra, rock, referred to individual stones that had been hewed together to form something bigger than any one stone could be on its own. Peter understood this concept because even when he wrote his epistle in 1 Peter chapter 2, speaking of the church, he says, you are all living stones come together to form one spiritual house. You see, the church is the coming together of individual stones unified to make something bigger. That's what Jesus meant. That's why he asked the disciples, not just Peter, who do y'all say the Son of Man is? The church is made up of individuals linked, whose job it is to reflect and to legislate the values of the kingdom of God. He calls this church a legislative body. Because you see, the Greek word ecclesia means called out ones. It referred to citizens called out to be part of the Congress or the Parliament of Greek city-states to legislate. You know the job of the church? Not just to have weekly services on Sundays or maybe in the midweek, although that plays a part. It is to be God's legislative agency from heaven to history. Look at it like an embassy. America has embassies all around the world. An American embassy is really a little bit of America a long way from home. In a foreign country, in the American embassy, the laws of America rule, not the laws of the country in which it's located. Because embassies are sovereign territory. They belong to the country they're from, not the country they're in. You get in trouble, you're overseas, you want to get beyond that gate because when you do, you're in America now. You know what the church is supposed to be? A little bit of heaven a long way from home, where the values of eternity are operative in the location of history. The problem today is that the church has become like the culture rather than representing the laws of the homeland. That's why you can have racial division in the church existing worse and longer than racial divisions in society. Because we're not legislating from heaven to earth, we're legislating from earth to the church. We might call that song backwards Christian soldiers. The unity of the church is critical to the progress of God's work in history. And that's why the church is made up of different cultures, different classes, different races, because God is seeking to unify his people so that these stones become a rock that cannot be stopped. Jesus said, I will build my church. Notice he's on the offense. He says the gates of hell shall not prevail. Hell is on the defense. The church shouldn't be spending its time stopping hell. Hell should be spending its time trying to stop the church, because the church operating as this unified entity of stones becoming a rock has become very powerful. Let me ask you a question. How can we have all these churches on all these corners with all these preachers and all these members and all these programs and all these leaders and all these facilities and still have all this mess? There's a dead monkey on the line somewhere. The levees aren't holding. And one of the reasons the levees aren't holding is because we've missed the purpose of the church. You see, we've made the purpose of the church the church. And the purpose of the church is not the church. The purpose of the church is the kingdom. That's why verse 19 of Matthew 16 says, I will give you the keys to the kingdom. Because the church exists to promote the kingdom, and the kingdom is the visible demonstration of the comprehensive rule of God over every area of life. There is nothing that sits outside of the kingdom. The church's job is to reflect that underneath the lordship of Jesus Christ. But because the church has become ingrown and lives for the church, and therefore misses the kingdom, it hasn't utilized its keys. What are keys for? Well, Isaiah 22:22 says, keys are to gain you access. You get in your house with keys, you get in your car with keys, you get in your office with keys. They gain you access. God says he's given the church the keys. It's the only group that's been given the keys, by the way, to access heaven's authority. I will give you the keys to the kingdom. You ever been in a hurry to go somewhere and not been able to find your keys? You're not going anywhere because you can't access anything. Or maybe you're like me. You got keys on your keychain, and some of them you don't even know where they go to anymore. So they're useless keys. Notice what the keys are for: to access another realm, the kingdom of heaven. God has given the church access to heaven so heaven can act on behalf of the church that's unified, cross-racially, cross-culturally, cross-class, to be this monster levy to keep Satan and hell, the gates of hell, from prevailing. Gates in the Old Testament was used of the place where the leaders would legislate from. It was where the laws were passed and the governance was provided. So the gates of hell is trying to govern what happens in history. God has built his church, given us his keys, so that for every hellish gate there is a heavenly door to be opened by the church to post up the levees to hold back the enemy. But if the church exists for the church and doesn't understand and utilize the keys, then we won't have the impact, and the levees will fall and the culture will fail. The racial divide will continue, and Sunday morning at 11 o'clock will continue to be one of the most segregated hours in America. How do you know when the keys are being used by a unified church and they're opening up the doors of heaven against the gates of hell? Well, he says, whatever you bind on earth, verse 19 says, will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. To bind and to loose is to restrict or permit. It means God's going to back your play. He's going to let you share his authority in history. I remember one time when I was in New York, staying at a Marriott hotel. I checked out, caught a plane to go to Chicago, where I checked into a Hilton hotel. I checked into a Hilton hotel, went up to my room on the 30th something floor, only to discover, click, click, red light, the door wouldn't open. Click, click, red light, the door wouldn't open. Click, click, red light, the door wouldn't open. Do you know how irritating it is to go 30 floors with luggage and the door not work, the key not work? So somewhat evangelically frustrated, I went back down and I asked the proprietor to give me another key. This key does not work. To which he said, sir, that key doesn't go to this hotel. I was using my Marriott key and a Hilton lock, and that key doesn't open that door. The church is using the wrong keys, and that's why the doors aren't opening and the society is flooding. We're using political keys and social keys and racial keys, not kingdom keys. So we're not getting kingdom authority. And in spite of the prayer meetings and the church meetings and the conferences and the books and the tapes and all the things we do, the authority is missing. Wrong keys. That lock won't work when you aren't using kingdom keys. When you are, heaven overrules. That's when you know that you're operating under divine authority. As you embrace oneness, or as we call the book, Oneness Embraced, our unity is critical, not only for ourselves, so that we can all get along. Our unity is critical for the salvation of a nation, because God has only given the church access to him to overrule what the enemy is doing in society. It's time that we embrace one another and use the keys he's granted.
Guys, that was an inspirational and challenging message that we just heard from Dr. Evans. When he said there at the end that the church's unity is essential for the salvation of our nation, I hope that struck a chord in your heart. And that's really a deep subject matter that we're going to continue to talk about right now. So we're going to move into a Zoom discussion. If you're watching right now on our website, you can see the link to that right below. Again, though, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you're going to have to go to www.calvaryftl.com/online so that you can join us for this discussion. See you guys there.